Hello, everyone. My name is Daria Impiombato, and I'm a China analyst at the Australian Strategic Policy Institute in our Cyber Technology and Security program. My research focuses on China, human rights, and technology, and looks at things like information control, censorship, and propaganda. So in terms of foreign information manipulation and interference, the CCP as an actor has the strongest combination of intent and capabilities. Because the Chinese party state has mastered these techniques at home in terms of information control and manipulation of information, it is becoming easier to then export these techniques overseas as well. Our research at ASPI has focused on a lot of the content and vectors of FIMI. I personally have looked particularly at the Uyghur region, also known as Xinjiang, but have also focused on the development of some ways in which the CCP has tried to shape the narratives about this issue overseas, and especially, for example, in their use of influencers. Our latest report, however, has shifted the focus from the content to the tools that the CCP is using for these information campaigns, and things like generative AI, neurotechnologies, and ambient technologies. And obviously, China is not the only actor that is developing these technologies. The US is still leading, but we're particularly focused on the alignment that Chinese tech companies have with CCP goals. And this presents a unique challenge, especially in terms of the information environment. This is evident, especially when looking at how the CCP has been deploying some of these technologies, especially generative AI, in the information space, and how these tools have aligned with the CCP's illiberal and authoritarian pursuits, both domestically and abroad, especially through means such as influence campaigns, targeted psychological operations, transnational repression, cyber operations, and their enhanced military capabilities. So China, the Chinese propaganda apparatus in particular, has been focusing on the non-traditional media environment for a while now. And for a few years, we've been reporting on the co-option of influencers, both domestic and foreign influencers. So the way that these people that are seemingly independent actors in the information space are guided by the CCP. This guidance happens through various means. It is obviously stipulated in PRC rules and regulations and laws that prohibit the discussion of particular topics online. But also it's directed by the platforms themselves. So because a lot of this content is firstly created in China, even by foreign influencers residing in China, that means that it has already gone through all of the censorship and monitoring that happen inside the Chinese media environment and social media environment before being published in international platforms like YouTube, for example. There are also ways in which the CCP is trying to promote the development of specific content, and that is done through, for example, competitions or the institution of prizes to give out to influencers that produce these videos, or sending particular groups of influencers to paid tours of regions like Xinjiang or Tibet or whatever region that the CCP wants to focus the attention on. As we wrote in our report, Singing from the CCP song sheet, we talk about several influencers from a whole sort of different countries residing in China. The CCP has effectively created an online censorship regime where the environment makes it so that most people are encouraged to promote the type of content that the CCP would like them to, without them having to have a direct form of influence or payment or things like that. So in terms of discouraging or deterring critical voices, our report that I mentioned, singing, focuses on the situation domestically first. Obviously, it is easier for the CCP to enforce its rules at home, but it is an important signal for other influencers producing content on hot button issues like Xinjiang or Hong Kong or Tibet. And we do outline a few case studies where influencers that used to be really, really popular on Chinese social media have then been very drastically cancelled and threatened also in real life, not just online, just because they ever so slightly fell out of line. So this is an important reminder, we think, to all those who choose to go down this path while residing in China, that to the eyes of the propaganda machine, ultimately they are disposable. When it comes to people residing overseas, there is a mix of both online and offline tactics. These are all forms of transnational repression, and they include harassment through bots or trolls, defamation that often happens through tech-enhanced disinformation campaigns, but also it can go all the way to physical surveillance in more extreme cases and physical harassment. With the emergence of more intrusive and persuasive technologies, as I mentioned in an earlier question, these are now at the party's disposal, and it has become much easier to flood the information environment. So it is not as necessary as it used to be to silence those critical voices, because it is way easier to drown them out through noise and through the promotion of the preferred narratives, especially when the CCP has control over the platforms. It becomes easier to manipulate the algorithm so that those narratives are suppressed or drowned out. When it comes to convergence between Chinese and Russian foreign information manipulation and interference, we have started to see a lot of signals. In singing from the CCP song sheet, for example, we looked at Russian influencers residing in China, and the content of their videos actually said a lot about what types of narratives the party states prefers in terms of the Sino-Russia relationship. And obviously there were all messages of friendship between Russia and China, and they identified, it promoted all the work that has been done on both sides to overcome border challenges, for example, and kind of promoted this enthusiasm, renewed enthusiasm about the Sino-Russia relationship. They also included messages on the Russian invasion of Ukraine, and definitely followed the party state lines on that. In some other research, my colleagues also found additional ties between Russian and Chinese propaganda apparatuses in Pacific Island countries. For example, in the Solomon Islands, which just went through national and provincial elections in April 2024. And in that instance, both countries, Russia and China, their propaganda systems were accusing the United States without evidence of using its foreign aid and networks across Solomon Islands to influence the voting at the election. And sort of these messages were spread globally, but then were amplified locally. This campaign adds to a growing body of evidence that shows that China and Russia's partnership extends into the information domain, and they've started collaborating across the Indo-Pacific. We are always asked about what impacts these campaigns have, and the quick answer is that it is really difficult to quantify impact, but we have started to see these impacts slowly arising. So, firstly, with the continuous refining of the techniques of influence and manipulation, it has become really, really hard for policymakers to address these issues, and that's an important impact. But also, as I mentioned, with persuasive technologies, and these technologies that are increasingly manipulative and take away people's decision-making power, this space is becoming really, really complex, and it will get even worse over time if we don't try to understand the nuances of these campaigns more deeply, and how they influence people. So I think at the moment, the biggest impact is still felt by those communities that have been incessantly targeted over decades, including Uyghurs, Tibetans, and Hong Kongers, but activists in general. And the issue has only grown worse over time, not just within China's borders, but in our own countries as well. So there is a lot that single countries can do to address these issues, but also a lot that can be done in coordination as an international community. So I have touched upon several different and compounding issues which require a multi-pronged approach, a multi-pronged response. Um, you know, I think every issue needs to be sort of isolated and tackled specifically, but also overall, I can say that the response needs to include both the public and private sectors, and not just the government. And it needs to be focused on both protecting civil society from transnational repression and preserving our democratic institutions. Not just the institutions' integrity, but also people's support for those institutions. In terms of trends and emerging things that we need to look out for in the near future, I would say the compounding effects of a stronger China-Russia alignment are definitely something to worry about, as well as China's growing capabilities and applications of emerging technologies. Because these, as I said, these will make the space increasingly complex and difficult to tackle from a policy perspective on the side of democratic countries. So because these issues are often also made worse by geopolitical events and economic dynamics, which have become ever more unpredictable and volatile in the current environment, um, it is hard to make long-term predictions, especially in the information space. I would say that it is good to see that more governments are taking these issues seriously, and that especially looking at these issues from a national security lens, but also through looking at the intersectional implications of foreign information manipulation and interference. But we still definitely have a long way to go.